are Dr. Elieshiupendo. Welcome again to another episode on the medical case of Jesus Christ. And on today's episode, we're going to discuss on the agony of Jesus. Before we go further to discuss the agony of Jesus Christ, let us first know what agony is. Agony is about the suffering and the pain that Jesus Christ went through before his death, or before the total plan, which leads to the death and the resurrection of Jesus Christ. On today's episode, I'm accompanied with my fellow colleagues,
Dr. Victoria
and Dr. Neema.
You're very welcome, and it's so good to have you here today. And let's go further and discuss about the agony of Jesus Christ. So we see in the Word of God, or in the Bible, it tells us that after the Last Supper, Jesus went to Gethsemane and prayed. And he prayed 3 times.
Yeah.
Let this cup be, Lord, if it is your will, let this cup pass me by. Yes. And why would he pray such a prayer, Dr. Neema?
Well, for someone to start speaking of such a statement, it means that this person is contemplating on what's going on around him. There is a certain situation that was coming before him. So the cup, he was speaking about what was coming before him. So the weight of what he was going to go through made him psychologically, traumatized. So he was going through a lot of emotional stress just at the thought of what was about to happen. So to begin with, he was stressed emotionally. So at that time point, we have stress hormones, in our bodies, have the cortisol and all these things that are going around him. So he must have been feeling very and in discomfort. He must have been in stress, So for him to start speaking of such a word, it means he was now saying, I wish that I would not have to go through what I'm about to go through. Because now you're contemplating, you're analyzing everything that is about to happen, and you know that perhaps this might cost me a lot, perhaps my life. So if there's any way I can escape this, then yes, because humanly speaking, this is taking a lot of drain on me. Yeah.
So, and we also see in the scriptures, it tells us that in that state, he prayed to a state that he was sweating blood. Can you tell us more about that, Dr. Victoria?
Yeah, medically, we say that sweating blood, we call it hemihydrosis or hematidrosis. It depends with which side of a country you are in. But this is where a person sweats blood, as in the sweat comes out, but there is also droplets of blood that flow out of your skin as well, which is not a normal thing, as we know. And even in the world currently, globally, they've only recorded at least 6 cases only. Actually at most 6 cases of hematidrosis, and that is because it's not a normal thing. So what happens is that the person is in so much mental anguish, he's in so much anxiety, as Dr. Neema talked about his situation being stressed and all that. And so this person, the blood vessels tend to burst open, and if they burst, then they come out together with the sweat. But these cases have actually been noted on prisoners who maybe are about to be hung, or they have a death penalty. When they are about to go to the death penalty, that's exactly when the hemihydrosis happens. But also something else they have recorded is that they usually use some sort of alcohol rub to rub on the person so as to stop bleeding. It works, but it's not a sustainable treatment. So it doesn't mean that it works for good. If this person stops using the alcohol rub, then he or she keeps on sweating the blood. So it's something that has been noted that it happens only in a state where you are in extreme mental anguish. And I think that is exactly what had happened to Jesus as well.
Thank you very much. I liked there's a point that you mentioned about being in mental anguish. In today's world, we call it mental illness,
Right.
or something has to do with the mind.
Something psychiatric, yeah.
Yes, something psychiatric or something the psychologists have to. So I'm glad that you mentioned it.
Yeah.
In today's world,
Mhm.
if Jesus was right now
Mhm.
going through that, or if a psychiatrist was to attend Jesus Christ in that anxiety and whatnot, what would they give him to help him through that? And would it take away completely the symptoms? Would it take away completely whatever he was suffering?
He was suffering, yeah. Okay, so I do think, unfortunately, they might have misinterpreted what he's going through, especially because he knew what was coming. That's why he was stressed about it. So probably people would say, or rather the psychologists would say, he's being delusional, because there is no way that he would actually have to go through this. But let's assume that it was a stated punishment that was already stated out by the Roman government. So entirely the whole country knows that Jesus is going to be crucified. Let's say that is the state, which is not still according to the Bible. So what they would do is, the first thing they would do, the counseling. There will be a lot of counseling, trying to, let Jesus speak his mind, or rather just, air out his feelings and all that. Personally, I don't think it would have helped in any way, but that would be one of the techniques they would use. But also they probably would have given him those medications that would try to, calm him down, or in case he's like acting out in any way, because we are assuming if a person is in mental anguish, maybe they're just too anxious. So they will probably give him anti-anxiety medications to calm him down, to put him to sleep and all that. But still, I don't think it would diminish in any way the things that he was going to go through in the future. So I do like to believe that it was within the power of Jesus himself. It was not something that could be treated right now.
Powerful, very powerful. So and then we see after that he was captured by the Roman guards, and then he was taken before Herod and Pilate. Judgment was passed through. Now, can you tell us more about what he went through, Dr. Neema? Because after that, they had to go through certain punishments. And then, depending on the type of judgment that they had. So, from the Bible, it tells us that he was punished and then he went for crucifixion. So, that was the severity form of judgment that he received. So, can you tell us more about the punishment that he went through in a medical perspective? How much did it hurt him? Because we've already seen that he also went through mental breakdown before going through that. So why would he have a mental breakdown if at all the punishment was going to be a simple one? So please elaborate more. Tell us more details.
So starting with the moment that he was captured. So these Romans have something called scourging. So they would scourge these prisoners, and for the record of what Jesus went through, he had several stripes that he had to go through. So some say it's about 39 stripes that he was, had to go through. Now these stripes that he had to go through, these lashes, they were made of bones, They had bones. Some say it's bones from lambs. Okay, so these are bones and some pieces of metals, some record it that way. So these are deep enough to pierce the flesh, okay, of the prisoner that is actually going to go through. So Jesus was that prisoner. So he had to go through these lashes, and each one of them, it would go through it
caused 9 lacerations.
About 9 lacerations. So it would tear up the flesh, and you know that the human body. So these were given at the back. So the human body, you have your skin, and then you have your nerves, okay, and then you have all this, the flesh, the muscles, okay, to the bones. So these were enough to tear from the layer of the first layer, which is your skin, which has a lot of blood vessels over there. You have bleeding that can happen. You have nerves damage, which you have a lot of pain to the point of going down to the muscles. That is going to cause you a huge amount of bleeding and excruciating pain.
Yeah.
So these lacerations were not just done by ordinary people. These were big men. It's recorded that they're probably as big as those footballers, American footballers, you know. These are people with big weight, about almost 100 to 200 kilogram people, you know, they must have been gigantic. So these are muscular people holding a big lash. So you're imagining that this lash is going to this 30-something-year-old man, you know, lacerating his back, you know, coming back, doing it again 39 times. Okay, so you can imagine the damage that must have been around his back, because it was all through from the back to the, you know, to the thighs. Yeah, so they would tie him up, you know, somewhere where he cannot be able to, you know, move around or go away from the pain. So he felt every one of it. Yeah. So this was too much, you know, too much damage for one person to take. Yeah. So that was the first thing that he had to go through, the scourging aspect. So he must have been very tired, you know, might have bled. He must have been in so much pain, and they didn't give him any pain medication during that time, because you must have been in so much pain. And actually, to rectify all those lacerations, you need a lot of stitches, you know, to stitch each one of them. You know, thousands of stitches. So at the end of the day, he also had to go through placing of the crowns. So these are thorns, you know. It has its specific name. It's something like a palm tree, or a jejube tree. I've forgotten its name, but they were woven it, and it will be deep enough to, you know, to go through around your scalp. So that it was the soldiers that placed it on top of his head. You know, they were saying that you're a king, you know. So they were trying to mess around with him and placed it on his head. And that must have caused bleeding as well. So back to the whole thing that you have your nerves, you have your blood vessels, and actually even the blood vessels around this area are quite sensitive. Yeah. So these are blood vessels that are going up to your brain. So there are a lot of complications that can arise just by bleeding around this area. So we do not know what area could have been pierced, because I'm thinking loudly, if it was a carotid artery, if it was one of these major arteries, he could have bled to death. So I'm thinking probably it may have not pierced one of those major arteries. That's why he didn't die on spot. So that as well. So he had to go through all this, and now he had to also, after that, go to the carrying of the cross. Yes. So these are major things that Jesus was already going through up at this point. I don't think that he had eaten anything at this point. So I'm trying to think hypoglycemia, anemia. You know, I'm trying to think medically that this is somebody who is actually very unstable. And until this moment, I could say that he was nearly dying. Or probably could have been dead by now. Because I don't think someone would have been able to survive all this, plus that mental stress that he was going through. It would be so difficult for someone to go through all that. Yeah. And
we also see that he was given blows. They slapped him, they punched him in the face. Maybe it was not written, but maybe he lost some teeth. We don't know. Maybe they disfigured. Actually, not maybe. In Zechariah, Zechariah, it tells us they looked, they did not recognize his face. I'm paraphrasing the verse. But I think if it's not Isaiah, it was Zechariah, it says that they disfigured him. He was not recognized to his own people. So I can imagine the amount of torture he went through. Now, coming to you, Dr. Victoria, can you explain to us more on the crucifixion, the whole process of crucifixion, and what it aimed at?
Yeah. So at this particular point, just backtracking back to Jesus, he already had hanging skin. We call it skin, but it's the muscles were hanging outside of his body already. And then they were telling him to carry up the cross. And that cross already is just made up of pine tree, and it's not smooth, it's rough. So even the person that is going to lay upon that cross, it means that they're going to have they're going to experience more pain while they're just lying on it, not even doing anything. So we have seen in the scriptures that I think his name was Simon. He was called to help Jesus carry the cross, and until he reached to that point where he was supposed to be crucified. Now, when you look at how Romans used to torture, I think they understood anatomy so well. They understood how the body is made up. So there were places that they would touch that they know that you will feel an extreme pain, but you will not die immediately. And we are going to see that even how they did that to Jesus. So the first thing is when they were nailing him on the cross. Now, I've seen some people say that Jesus was nailed on their palms, but it is impossible. If you nail a person on the palm, they won't be able to hold the weight. So if they won't be able to hold the weight when they put the cross up, that means the nail would tear down the fingers. So that is not what the Romans did. What the Romans did, they actually nailed him on his wrist. But they made sure they nailed right on the nerve that passes on the wrist, which is a median nerve. And that would cause an intense electric kind of pain, electric shooting pain all over his arm. So they did that in both sides, but also they made sure that they do not touch the artery, because they knew if they touch the artery, that means he would bleed. So they did that, but they also did the same thing on his feet as well, that they nailed somewhere between the two bones, we call them metatarsals, the first and the second one, and they diverged just not exactly on the artery to make sure it's not touched and he doesn't overbleed, but they nailed on the plantar nerve, which will also cause shooting pain. And then after that, they raised the cross, which makes the situation even more uncomfortable. Now, what happens there is that every time Jesus would breathe, he would feel pain on his back, because remember, he was tortured on his back. He was being scourged on his back, so he has hanging muscles. So he had intense pain every time he would move on that rough piece of wood. But also, apart from that, he also, if you can see in the scriptures, he used to speak. He would say some words. So the fact that he was speaking, every time he breathed out, he had intense pain. It took so much pain for him to speak. It takes so much pain for him to breathe out the air, because that's how you speak. So the only time that he felt some sort of relief is when he breathed in. But every time he breathed out, it was intense pain. So as you can see here, Romans were very, very detailed when it came to their form of torture. And during that time, you can also see that there was a soldier who gave him, when Jesus said he's thirsty, I believe, and then he gave him sour wine, and Jesus rejected that. Before I researched on that, I did not understand, because I was like, you said you're thirsty and you're given the sour wine, why are you saying no to it? But then I came to realize that actually the sour wine helps with numbing the pain. And Jesus did not want to numb the pain. He actually wanted to go through it as is, which is an extreme situation for a human being at this particular point. So Jesus went through that pain. So at that particular point, he's experiencing the pain from the lacerations, he's experiencing the pain from the crown of thorns and the blows he had on the head. He was also experiencing intense, extreme pain from the nerves that were pierced by the nails. So for me, I mean, that is beyond human nature. It's not a normal thing. And at this particular point, you would think that he probably is in shock or something, but he is not in shock because the man was still speaking things that were actually making sense. He was still communicating with the people around him. So yeah, it shows that he endured the pain.
Wow. Because for me, if I was in his position,
Yeah.
I would have prayed the same. Let this cup pass me.
Yeah.
And if the Lord was not taking it, or if it was not being taken away, I would have just run away. Because I've been in the theater, I've been in the emergency, I've seen people who have undergone accidents. They have either need couple of stitches. They need anesthesia. You have to do that under anesthesia. But this man, Jesus Christ, not under any anesthesia, going through that experience, that is not my cup of tea. Definitely, that is not my cup of tea, and that is why he is Jesus and I am me. And then I can imagine, because when we're discussing this, I have every diagnosis. I mean, like a couple of diagnoses that are coming in my mind, or the things that people are going through currently. So if we take back from Gethsemane, Jesus went through mental illness. He had a state of mental illness at that time. And then we have from Gethsemane, we have before Pilate or Herod. He went through the court system and he was judged like other thieves or the culprits,
Yeah.
severe form of judgment. And then he went through in today's world, if a person had, for example, a car crash, or they had trauma to their head, they would be diagnosed having traumatic brain injury. It could be mild, moderate, or severe, depending on the blow of the impact.
Yeah.
So this man had traumatic brain injury because of the blows that he received. This man, he had, apart from the traumatic brain injury, this man also had severe trauma on his body,
Physical body. Yeah.
on his physical body,
Soft tissue.
body trauma. Actually, that was too much, and he did not have any anesthesia or anything to numb his pain.
Yeah.
He went through a lot
Yeah.
for a normal human being. That is quite a lot.
Yeah.
Quite a lot,
Yeah.
to be honest. And now my question is, after going through all that, through from Gethsemane to the cross, what was the essence? Why did he have to go through all this? I'm talking from the medical perspective, because right now would have said this person has psychosis. Why does he have to go through all that? Would have said, I've heard voices telling me that I should do this, I should do this. Or we would say that he's schizophrenic. But from the medical perspective, do we have something that will cause a person to go through all that torture?
Willingly?
Yes, willingly. Do we have
Absolutely
that?
not. Absolutely not. We will definitely, as I said, basically they would just diagnose him with a mental illness. It doesn't matter of any kind. It might be bipolar, it might be schizophrenic, it might be anything. Delusion, grandiose delusion. Oh, he probably thinks he's a king. That's why he's letting himself go through that. There's something wrong with his thinking, or rather his insights and all that stuff. But I don't see in your normal senses that you would actually be okay. First of all, just at that first scorch you get after you have gotten your 9 lacerations, your mental state might come back at this particular point. So this is a man who is God, who decided willingly to actually go through this. And I love the way you say that he did not have any kind of anesthesia. They offered him. the numbing wine, and still he said no. That is, I think it's beyond mental illness. It's not something you can even diagnose.
Yeah. Or even if you are to say that you are making this decision sanely, I don't think it will be to that extent that he went through.
Right.
I mean, we see people, even in hospitals, making some decisions, People donate their organs, people make some sacrifices, for their loved ones. They would be willing to go through certain things, but not to the extent of all that we just discussed,
Sure.
So it would not be, you'll not be able to handle it.
Yeah, to that intensity.
That intensity will be very difficult to, because at the end of the day, this is going to cost my life. So you just make that decision to say no, and we're going to take this cup of tea.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for joining us today. This was quite eye-opening. At least we know that Jesus was not psychotic, he was not schizophrenic, or he had not any mental condition or a mental illness that will cause him to go willingly to the cross like that. And whatever he went through, it was quite much for a person. And in a normal circumstance, it was quite a lot. It was severe, it was torturous, it was deadly. And being able to endure through all that, medically, there is no diagnosis for that. But in the spirit sense, we can say that is all we call the love of God. Thank you very much for joining us. See you next time.